should be live. We should be live now. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Today we have Jennifer from New York, and we will talk about startups, her story, because I'm also curious about her story, because I met her, I think, during a Twitter space. It was, I thought 2 months ago, but it's already six or 5 or 6 months ago. So welcome everyone. Let's give a couple of minutes to let people come. How are you, Jennifer?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I've worked a lot, but now I want to relax a bit. I was looking forward for this, and yes, so I think that we can start by letting you introduce yourself just a little bit, and then we will move into the main topic, which is the startups. Hey there, Graham. It is close to my heart, so I will be paying close attention. Thank you, Graham. Welcome, welcome. Okay, Jennifer. So, what about you?
Okay, so my name is Jennifer, and I'm the CEO and founder of Motivate You, which is a tech startup. So this is my fourth company, but my first like quintessential tech startup. And I grew up outside of New York City. I also lived for a few years in California and San Jose, but I have relocated to Virginia. But the United States, basically.
Nice, nice, nice. Maybe there is a chance for me to come to San Francisco in December, but let's see. Let's wait. Let's wait. Yeah. Perfect. So please go on. Hey, Simon. Hey, Graham.
Yeah, I'm getting used to the whole thing with the pop-ups and. But should I go into more detail about my current company or?
Yeah. Can you please start from, for example, how did you get into tech? If you are a developer, I don't know if you
Okay.
are a developer or not, because I
Oh, this
think
is a fun story.
yeah, this is why we are here. Hey, Timo. Hey there.
I did a talk last night in front of a class, and this came up. So my grandfather worked for Apple, and my grandparents got custody of me when I was 4. So that was when I first got my computer. So I had my first Apple computer in my room when I was 4. And back then, they were the big boxes in the 80s. So I started doing website development when I was 11, and then I continued to learn different languages. I know about 7 now, but I never considered myself a developer because I didn't go to school for it. I also had never been on Twitter till literally this April. Like I hadn't even looked into it at all. The only time I'd seen a tweet was when I was reposted in a news article. So when I joined Twitter and I found out that you could still be considered a developer even if you didn't formally go to school for that, I was like, wait, does that mean I'm a developer? I've been doing this. I thought it was a hobby because my grandparents instilled in me, like, you should get degrees, just acquire degrees. Their children didn't go to college, but they both graduated from college. And my grandfather had 7 businesses, but he never wanted me to go down that path. He's like, just go to school, just keep going to school. And so I had a conflict from feeling like a very entrepreneurial person, but feeling like that wasn't what I was supposed to do to achieve success. So it's been an interesting journey, but I think finally starting this particular company seems to have brought together both my strengths and passions, and so I finally feel like I've figured out what I'm supposed to be doing at 37.
Perfect. I'm 38, and I see Graham is some people start to recognize you now. Now that you start to talk about your story, we also put the profile picture, but that was not enough. So yes, so this is interesting. I've seen that you have been kind of active lately on also, especially on Twitter. I don't know if also on LinkedIn. I see you active. So I'm not that expert on startups, and I want to say publicly that I made my first investment in a startup for the Jennifer's company. So this is my very first investment. I would like to understand the process. And yes, Jennifer. So, but before stepping into your current startup, can you tell a little bit about the previous one? How much have you learned? Because I've interviewed a lot of people who have been in a startup, not with all successful stories, but they always say that they learn something, even if they have some problems. So just a little bit recap of the previous experiences, and then we step into this one. Thank you.
Yeah, so my first company was what would be considered like a solo prop. So I did tutoring for college and graduate students while I was in school myself, like starting in grad school. And then I just continued to do that part time while I was also working in emergency rooms, which was related to my master's degree. So that to me was, I guess, what I'd consider maybe like a side hustle because it was just something I always did. I enjoyed doing, but I didn't ever want to like make it into something big. And then my husband and I started a brick and mortar, and that was all driven by his idea and what he wanted to do. And then he pulled me in to do all the business stuff. So I learned how to then bring employees on and all of the legal stuff that goes on with forming a company at a larger scale. And then the third one I did was technically a tech startup, but nonprofit. So the market size and all of that is like different trajectory. But my co-founder had health issues, so we've kind of tabled it because it was his passion project. And so all of these things were not necessarily something I was super passionate about. Even the tutoring, I got started because one of my professors recommended me to somebody, and that's just how that went going. But this was the first company that I kind of like, it was my drive to do. And I think the pandemic allowed me to say, hey, there might not be any time left to, go for what you want. You might as well do it now. Like I said, I think the way I was raised a little bit risk averse. And so that's why I would help other people with what they were doing, but it was never, like my core passion. And I lost my train of thought, but we'll stop there.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. So, for example, in a startup, which is your favorite role? Have you always done your favorite role, or you need because I've heard that in a startup you should be like a ninja. You should do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So which is your favorite part, and which roles have you covered during these
Yeah. So for
experiences?
the first business, I did everything because it was just me. Um, but again, it wasn't scalable. But what I learned from that was what like how to determine your pricing, when to ramp it up, and then like at what point can you decide what clients you don't want. That business I stopped actually advertising 7 years ago for, and I still get referrals today. So I built up a lot of good clients, but I also became choosier and choosier as I went. But that was like a 12-year business, so it took me a while to get to that point where I could be choosy. um, and then for the second one, I was doing all the business stuff, and I didn't necessarily like it. It was just like, oh, you're better at this, so you do this piece. And then for the third one, it was pretty much everything, and now it's everything too. There's no like lines, no silos or anything. I just do everything for the company, and then when I get it to a point where I can replicate it, I understand what needs to be done, then I try to bring somebody else on.
Nice. Thank you. I see Timo is asking one of the things that he would like to know the legal things. I don't know how much we can cover in this live stream,
Yeah.
but for example, but I think this is one of the most interesting questions. So, for example, where or if you can just give a brief idea, of course, or maybe how can you get started at least how can you get started? Thank you.
Yeah, so for every country it's going to be different, but in the United States, there's a lot of companies that help. So LegalZoom is the one that we used for the brick and mortar. I don't recommend them. Their customer service is a little bit of a mess, and if you make a mistake, it's really hard to fix it with them. I used InkFile for this most recent company, and actually the tech started before. So the last two I used InkFile. It had great, it was very easy to use with them. Very clear customer service. If there's a mistake, they will fix it like right away. And then this last company, I started as an LLC because I was dumping a bunch of money into it. So for tax purposes, I wanted to be able to write it off. This is probably going to go over some people's heads, but usually people are choosing between an LLC or a C Corp. And then before I got investors, I switched to a C Corp. That was always the plan to switch. I just waited to the next year. And again, you have to weigh those benefits and tax benefits and things like that. So I would definitely at least get an advisor or somebody who's done it, who can give you an hour of their time to give you some pros and cons of each of them. But then ultimately, when you set it up in the beginning, if you're going to be small, just go ahead and do it on InkFile. It was like $300 to fill all the regulations and stuff. So that's much cheaper than paying, $3,000 minimum for a lawyer to do it. If you have no revenue yet, I would just use one of those services.
Perfect. So long story short, don't do this by yourself. This is the
Don't do it completely by yourself. Yeah, don't cost just as much, and you'll probably make a mistake. Each state has different laws. It gets crazy, but if you go through one of these services, they will make sure you fill all the boxes out.
Yeah. And I don't know, for example, the laws in the USA, but for example, in Italy, the rules change every 6 months. It's like the JavaScript frameworks. They keep changing. So if you're not updated, and if you're not really a business person, you don't want to you don't wake up, take a coffee, and check the news of the legal stuff. No?
Right.
You check something related to your job. This is usually what you do after a coffee or whatever you take. So maybe it's a good idea. And yes, if you're interested, maybe you can, but it's another job basically.
Yes.
Now we got this. Thank you, Jennifer. I think we will get some interesting questions. How do you recover when you have a tough weeks with your startup? What's your favorite way to celebrate the good weeks? I love this double question.
Yeah. So tough weeks are hard because they're all the time. Sometimes you have a really tough day. And there's two ways to go about it. First, figuring out why it was tough. So I have a 3 and a 6-year-old. So sometimes I really just don't get enough sleep the night before. They might keep me up. And then I have to say, like, okay, I need a nap because I'm everything's getting hard because I'm just so tired. Other times you might feel tired, but if you've got enough sleep, you're like, okay, this is stress. And so then for me, if it's a stress situation, I try to go outside. And this applies to, not even startups, just life. I try to go for a walk or go outside. One reason I moved to Virginia is because it's warmer and I can see the ocean from where I'm sitting right now. And so I get to go on walks on the beach, and that's super lucky. It's a lot more affordable to live on the beach here too than it is in some other places. So, I mean, that's like my most quick solution. How do I celebrate the good weeks? Not enough. The pandemic's made that really hard. That's also sometimes how I rationalize how I work so much. I'm like, well, I couldn't do much anyway if I wasn't working. So it's a good time to buckle down now. But usually also going outside. That's probably the thing I've done the most. It's the safest. Last night I ate a whole avocado, and people are like, oh, because I put on Twitter, I was like, it was a whole avocado night. They're like, oh, what happened? I'm like, no, it's good. I got to that was how I celebrated, like eating a whole avocado, because I had a couple wins like back to back last night. So it's like the little things. I think the hardest part about like my team is remote distributed. Sometimes I just want to like run down the hallway and give everybody high fives, and like there's no hallway to run down. So I will sometimes make like silly little videos where I'm jumping up and down and screaming my excitement, because that's like it's bottled up and I need to let it out somehow.
I think that I've seen that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I forgot. We could have used that now during the live, but I'll check this later. Yeah, people say, don't do it by myself. Yeah, that's a good idea. So yes, so okay, so now I think we can step into the main topic. So the topic is the world of startups. So I think you have a great experience about this. So what about the last one? Because I've seen that, and honestly, I've checked something. The idea was good, but it was more like the trust that I had in you that made me invest just a little money just to have an idea. So can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Okay. So the startup idea was a pre-pandemic idea, but the pandemic fueled it and like fueled the problem. So I launched it after the pandemic started. But after I had kids, I was trying to get back into the gym, and I went, but I ended up spending 2.5 hours between driving, getting them there for a 40-minute class. And so a lot of people have experienced this. You want to do healthy behaviors, but it's really hard to fit them into your day. So after going through all that, I thought, well, maybe I could work out from home. So I found my options were like Peloton, Mirror, Tempo. Okay, well, I have young kids, a small condo. How am I going to fit another big machine or afford it with all their toys in here, right? That's not an option. So I was like, okay, I could stream YouTube videos. I'm a kid of the 80s, so we used to have those Tybo videos, and you'd pop them in the VHS. And I'm like, well, this seems like that. Like there's no feedback. It's missing something. When I went back after grad school, I went back to school for a biochemistry degree. And while I was in school for that, I taught yoga and worked at a gym. And then I worked at a pool teaching yoga as well. And so I was also thinking about from the trainer's perspective, like how would I train somebody at home? And that's where I saw there was this lapse, because there was some really good tech directly being sold to consumers that had a lot of data, but there was nothing that was being sold to the trainers to use with their own clients. And so that's how this got born, both out of like my end user problem and seeing that as if I was still a yoga instructor today, what would I'd be stuck and have no good solution during the pandemic or other times where my clients might not want to come in to the gym.
Nice. So, okay. So, what about the idea, and also maybe at which point are you? I see that you just opened a crowdfunding. I don't know. Now I'll check something. But what's the point there? How is it going?
Okay. So our solution is we have a patent pending tech with motion tracking. So if anybody's familiar with the company Mirror, it's a life-size mirror, and you work out and you try to see if you're doing the same moves as the bot. But ours is a software, so it runs on any computer or mobile device. You don't need to buy any hardware, and we sell it to the trainers so they can use it with their clients. And then there's all the other regular platform stuff that people are looking for. So we launched a crowdfunding campaign in September 27th. And I think we're at, last time I checked, a little over 65,000. And then we opened the platform, motivateyou.live, went live, I say, on October 12th. For October, our revenue was $26,500, so $2,650. And based on signed contracts, we have the potential to close up to $33,000 for this month. And then we have over 18 million in our sales pipeline, meaning that we have to keep moving those potential clients through with more meetings. But those are all people who have made it past like the second call.
Nice. This is very interesting. I don't know if this is the site could be motivateyou.net. Do you think that's nice?
That's the motivateyou.net is our catch-all website. And then if you go there and you log in, it brings you to motivateyou.live, which is the platform.
Perfect.
So there's a link through there. Yeah.
Perfect. So let me share this now. We have this. Yeah, thank you. Now I'd like to know about maybe the hardest part since now, maybe which has been maybe one hard moment, and maybe we can also talk about one good moment, as XTS Sean asked, like one good thing and one bad, because
okay.
Yes.
So recently there hasn't been anything really negative. I think the biggest negative thing I had was in the beginning, where I lost somebody that I had from like the beginning of the company, who was a former client of mine. And so we had a close relationship, meaning that like his first child was born the same day as my second child. And I'd known him for a couple of years. But our expectations of what he would do and what he had time to do were different. So that didn't work out. And I think that was like the hardest, like beginning loss. Recently, again, this is going to sound silly, but it is a problem when you have it, is that I don't have enough time to get everybody through our funnel. And so it's finding good enterprise sales people for SaaS that are specifically used to selling enterprise SaaS, and then add on the fitness industry, because there is no, like, there's all middleware being sold in there. Those people don't necessarily exist, because this is a newer product in terms of how it's being sold and who it's being sold to. But even just finding enterprise SaaS salespeople who are available is tough. And so I'm getting bottlenecked, and that's probably my biggest problem. And it is a problem, even though it's a good one to have, because I don't want to lose sales because we're not moving fast enough. So that's something that's hard right now. And again, it's like, oh, you need time then to interview these people, but I don't have time to even get the sales calls done. So how do I find time to interview the people to help me with the sales calls? It becomes a circular problem. Good news. I mean, it's just been like lots of good stuff. That the revenue coming in pretty fast is good. last night I got invited to an application program that people usually have to apply to, and I got a straight invite, like, you don't have to apply, we just are inviting you straight into the program. Right after that, I opened an email from one of my mentors that said, hey, this really big person in the fitness industry wants to meet you. I was like, oh man, like boom, boom. That was my double win last night. I was like, these are fun things to see at the end of the night. Let's eat a whole avocado. Yeah.
Nice. That's great. So I think it's going pretty well for now. So I'm happy. Yeah, this makes me happy. And Timo has another question about ideas. What are the things that you consider before validating an idea as a good startup idea? Because I think we are full of ideas. So also our friends, we all have our millionaire idea, or maybe also billionaire idea. But the problem maybe is to realize that. So how can we choose between the millions or billions of ideas that are around?
Yes, that's a great idea. Or great question. So when I was like 14 or 15, I came up with this. I've always had a lot of ideas, but I came up with this one idea, and I asked my grandfather what he thought about it. And he's like, this is great. I had like drawings and stuff. He's like, write a 30-page business plan and I will give it to my, investor friends. And at that point, there was no Google. So I'm like, do I go to the library and find out how to do a 30-page business plan and also do my schoolwork? No, it never happened. Like, that's how he would block me from like doing it. Put like, he wasn't like, oh, I'll tell you how to do it. He would just divert me back to like, just go study, But with this particular company, when I decided I was going to start a startup during the pandemic, I had narrowed it down to 3 before I started talking to people who have been in like the startup space. And with one of my friends, we narrowed it down to, we went through, this idea was being the hardest, but the most lucrative, all the way down to one that would be the easiest I could completely do myself. And it would, be a pretty good win, but it would be small, quick. And I chose the easy one. And then the universe was like, no. And just oddly enough, people who were in the space and things just kept happening and coming across my way that was like, you should do this first one. So I was finding out that more and more people I knew had connections to people in this space that I was looking at. So I started doing user interviews and validated that there was the need, and then there was the willingness to pay something that would be worth, me going through the difficulties of this. Then I ended up reaching out to people on my LinkedIn, which I had luckily connected to one of my grandfather's former employees when he worked at Apple. So somebody he managed at Apple 30 years ago is now on my management team. But at first I just went to him and said, hey, I have this idea. Does this sound crazy? Like, what do you think? I've already talked to all these people. They said they would pay for it. That's how much they said they'd pay. And he was like, I want to work with this on you. I was like, oh, okay. I guess it's pretty good then. And so that's just how I kept just telling everybody about it with, being careful of, this, how I would do it. I didn't go into that because that's not really important in the beginning. The important is can you solve the problem? And is that actual problem for enough people? And how much would they be willing to pay to solve that problem? And then after I incorporated the company on the Ring file, then I got a lawyer for the patent. I first tried to see if I could do the patent myself. I went through a patent class, and then I was like, oh, I'm way in over my head with this. So I got as much of it done as I could. And then I reached out to a friend of mine who was a patent lawyer. I didn't realize she was on maternity leave. So then she referred me to one of her partners, and that all happened in a span of 30 days, all the stuff I just said. So I actually had the patent filed within 30 days of when I decided I was going to start the company, to doing the interviews, to reaching out to people, incorporating, and then getting the patent done. When I decide I'm going to do something, I kind of go all in.
I like this. Yes, I have a question that came up in my mind while you were talking. What about sharing ideas? Because I had one friend of mine who said, like, I have this secret idea, but don't say this to anyone. This is a revolution. This is and he never did anything good in his life. But so what about the ideas? So because you say that the first thing that you do, you try to validate this with other people. So what do you think? Maybe I don't know. Maybe in our life, maybe we have one one idea that maybe it's better to don't share, but maybe for the 99%, maybe it's better to share them, because sometimes we start with an idea, but maybe we go in a different direction. So what about sharing ideas for startups?
So when I was doing those interviews, I never shared the how. And I think you can or can't, it depends. So one of the first people I talked to had a lot of experience in venture capital and in the whole, like, there's no, people don't sign NDAs. Ideas are all about execution. Ideas aren't worth anything. And we were going through all of them. And then I had this one. He's like, yeah, actually, you might want to talk to a patent lawyer for this one. I was like, but you said this is, ideas, like, doesn't matter. He's like, yeah, 99.99% of the time. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I would say there's this famous saying too that says, when Henry Ford, designed the car, if he had asked people what they'd want, they would have said they wanted a faster horse. The point is, all they cared about was speed and getting from one place to another fast. They didn't care how. And so as like developers or builders, we usually get really excited about the how. But even when I do sales, if I start with that, I lose people. They don't care about the features, they care about the benefits. And so when you're doing the validation of your idea, if you just focus on like what problems you have, do you need a solution for it? What have you tried to use before? Does that work or not work, and why? And then you see there's that gap there, then fill it. And again, they don't care about the how, because once you say these are the benefits, then they'll want to learn about the features, but you're kind of too many steps ahead. So I didn't actually talk to any of the users or the people in the space about the how until April, when we validated the technology. So all of that before that was just, what's your problem? What have you tried? Why doesn't that work? Do you still want to solve your problem?
I love this answer, and I think this is applied especially to development and developers, because we like to talk about the frameworks, the language. There is like a word on Twitter about which is the best language, or if something is a language or not.
I
Someone
know.
that can literally lynch you, if you start talking about HTML, is that or not. Yeah, so maybe, but I think we can joke about this, but I think because they are more focused on the how you create that. Like if you want to build a home, maybe they talk about the tools, which is the best one, the fastest one. But that's a part of the game. But so you mean that you should be focused on something else, so the problem and the solution, of course.
Right. You can know what your how is, but you don't have to share that. So if there's any concern that you think that it might be something that people could copy easily or whatever, don't even worry about getting into that. You could still validate all of the stuff up to that and then just leave out the how you're going to do it. Henry Ford would say, oh, do you travel? Yes. How do you travel now? A horse and buggy. Is that effective? No, it's too slow. Okay. Do you want to travel faster? Yes, I want to get to place faster. If I could give you a solution that you could travel faster, would you pay for it? Yes. How much? Okay. I never mentioned I was building a car, but I know as Henry Ford, that's my goal, right? So like you can do the same thing. You can ask a bunch of questions without ever explaining what that how is. And then if you get further along, then if you do decide to go forward, then by the time you tell people how you're doing it, you should have enough momentum that you wouldn't be worried about them catching up, because you've already done all of that. The other piece built those relationships and everything.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now I have another idea. By the way, if you have any idea, any question, just drop them in the chat below. We are here, really relaxed. Finally, I can stop checking my mail for half an hour, so I'm happy. Maybe at the end of this hour, I'll pay this, and also you, but at least I can relax. So, how much is the feedback important for you? Because you said like you ask to people like, which is your problem? How much would you pay? So, do you work a lot on this part, or is this not that relevant?
Yeah, so I did over 100 user interviews by October, found it in August of 2020. And then I've just continued to do them since then. So one thing I discovered early on was that something that I thought would be a feature in, say, year 3 or 4, really people were demanding as a feature for like the first version. And so if I hadn't kept, bringing up as we got closer to saying, okay, now this is what we're actually building, and finding out what people's needs were, then I would have not put that in early enough. And then maybe somebody else would have built that part of the solution instead. And part of it was that other feature is became a problem for people after the pandemic started, because people are trying to come up with solutions to deal with the pandemic. And so the solutions that they built as a result, or things that they spent money on as a result, they're now like, well, we don't want to scrap that, So how can we use the stuff that we've made already on your platform? And so I was like, oh, well, if this is more important, then we will reprioritize this up here, just shuffle things around, and stuff that I thought was cool, they're like, I'm like, oh, come on. But the CEO of TripAdvisor also was the founder. So he's been in the company for like 14, 15 years. And I was lucky enough to do a roundtable with him through the accelerator program I went to. And he told a story of an idea he had that he was like super pumped about. And so they would always do like trial pages, put a page up, see how many people clicked on, if there was interest. So they put one up for his idea, and there was like not enough traction. So he's like, well, I think we just, framed it wrong, or we did advertising wrong. Let's try again. Did it again, no traction. Third time, no traction. So he's finally had to admit to his team, okay, that was a crappy idea. Even though I love it, it's not getting enough hits, so it wouldn't be worth us building. So there, you do have to be very vulnerable too. And the thing is, if you're not vulnerable now, you'll be vulnerable later, but you will have wasted time, money, and energy also. So it's kind of better to get some of that stuff out of the way. So it is good to, as soon as you're ready to, share it with people, and just keep letting people poke holes in it. The other thing is, people will not always use stuff in the same flow that you anticipate or want them to. And you could try to force people down a funnel or down in a certain direction, but you'll also have to be willing to work with and adapt to how people are naturally going to engage with your solution. And, again, be accepting of that, and then see how can you kind of like meet them in the middle. So you might have a bigger vision for it, but you do really have to see, like, if you want to scale it, you have to, be willing to adapt to your customers.
Yes, I like this idea that maybe you need to be objective. Like maybe for you, this idea will really change your life, but if that's just for you and a couple of other people in the world, maybe it's not worth to realize this, to create a company. Maybe you can try to find the solution to that problem. Maybe understand why this problem is just for you and other 10 people. So, of course, so maybe this is also why we need the feedback of many people. I apply this, for example. Sometimes I do some polls. For example, when I'm not sure what I should do. Also, I think that having an audience is useful. For example, I'm thinking about like if I should make more live streams on Twitch, YouTube. So when I don't know what to do, I ask to my audience. So I think this is very important for me, because sometimes I get the total opposite answer that I would give. So I am the minority. So I have another question. If there is someone, no? How much is the social media presence important? Because you can have the best idea in the world, but if you are alone in the desert, you are in trouble, basically. So how much is important, the social media presence? Maybe if you have the best idea, someone will notice you, but maybe that's just once in your life, maybe. So we are talking about what usually happens.
Yeah, so it depends on what type of thing you're building. If you're trying to do a startup, you definitely need a lot of eyeballs. So before this company, I was probably on social media, like for LinkedIn, I only went on to update my resume. I went on Facebook once or twice a year. There was actually 2 years where I didn't use it at all. I didn't have a Twitter or an Instagram account. I had to make them. But I think I also didn't know like which platform was right for me. So Twitter is definitely the one that feels the most fun to me. I don't really like the other platforms, but it's kind of like, I know LinkedIn gets us the best qualified leads. We get the most traffic from Twitter, but we get the best leads from LinkedIn. And so what I've done is I will test stuff on Twitter because it's fast, it moves fast. I used to test the stuff on the website, the copy, and then move it to social media. On Twitter, I realized, hey, I can just test it on Twitter and then, get faster feedback. So I test on Twitter. Then I test on LinkedIn, where I bet our strongest audience is. And then I put things on the website. So that's helped me save time too in terms of validating things. But I think if you find a channel that works for you, just have some page or presence on the other ones. It doesn't mean you have to create original content for all of them. Even if you're copying and pasting, if somebody does go on Facebook, then they say, oh yeah, this company exists. And yes, they're active because we see something here. But I think it's definitely important to have a presence, but not let it get to you where I've seen some people get really depressed because they spend too much time on it. So forcing yourself to be on a site maybe that is negative for you and whatever reason, if you can, as you grow, offset that to a team. But even like what I did for the platforms I didn't like before I had more team members was I would just literally put one post a month. And it's just like, okay, again, we exist. People see that the page is active at least. But if you can find one channel that resonates with you, then try to, hone in your group from there. And I think it's definitely a necessity in today's times. I think that's known. The question is, how much time do you get to let it take away from you?
That is a great answer. Hey, Maninder, Uday, hey there, how's it going? Out of the box, I like this nickname. Hey there. Yes, so for example, this is also what I do when I have some strange idea. Usually I have some of them. The first thing that I do is I write this on Twitter and I get some feedback. Sometimes I get some very good replies, so it's useful. I think it's very important to don't be used by social media, but do the opposite. So you are doing something, and because I think that social media can be really tricky. By the way, 2 years ago I had 0 online presence, so I built that really from zero. I was literally that person who never even opened Twitter or Facebook. So it's very important to keep doing your stuff. So I always say like you should document, for example, what you do. I like how your approach on how are you promoting the startup, talking about that, but not just staying on social media for the sake of staying on social media, because that could be tricky after a while. Usually, especially I think on Twitter, sometimes you don't get the reward that you expect. Maybe you stay for hours and okay, you get some like, but it's not maybe we should be focused more on what we are doing. It's a powerful tool, but we should not just be used by them, because I call this like the like game. So the social media goal is to keep you hooked on the social media. So this is what we should avoid instead. For example, this is one of the reasons why I started making these interviews. So at least now I'm not checking social media. We are trying to do something useful to answer questions, and that's it. And I love you. Udai is my moderator. Udai, I had set a bot to say like, but it seems that it failed. Thank you for replacing this stupid bot. So thank you. Nice, perfect. Anyway, so yeah, can we give some advice, because I think that there are some people in the chat, maybe they would like to maybe be a part of a startup, or maybe they want to get started, because I made a poll and a lot of people they've never been involved into that. So it's something I think new, still new for many people. So yeah, what can we say to them about this?
I would say the spaces on Twitter are actually great to meet other people in there, and a lot of the founders, and we have a lot of founder spaces throughout the week. But if you're not sure if you want to do it, or you just want to get an idea of what it's like, or you want to try to learn something new, that's definitely like the place to do it. Like any of the interns I have, I'm always like, hey, do you want to learn something that's not what you're studying? Like, do you want to try a side project within the startup, just to like get out of your system? And I have one girl who does like machine learning, and she wanted to try something in marketing. So I had her do a video of like the walkthroughs, like how to videos. And then she's like, yeah, I'm going to go to grad school for machine learning. I'm like, awesome. Like, she'd like revalidate it. Like, yeah, she was like, it was fun doing it, but I definitely know that this is that I want to be doing machine learning now. And that's great. It's great to have that validation that there's not this like idea in your head all the time. Like, am I missing something? Should I be doing something else? If you don't know, try it. And startups are a great place to like have that freedom to do it. And, and she's going to stay on part-time while she's going back to school. That's another thing that, there's more flexibility there. Like, I don't have this position at a big company that has to be filled at this number of hours, and otherwise it's not position can't be filled. She went from intern to part-time to post undergrad part-time, and then when she's done with grad school she can come on full-time. Like, I can change that, whatever, it's not a big deal. We can always adjust those specs. If you don't have experience at all in a certain thing and you're willing to try to start, they probably will let you do it if it's unpaid. And then if you are experienced somewhat, you can get usually like a small stipend or something. But startups do not have a ton of money, so that's the other thing. What you use though what you do, if you do it well, will actually probably get used instead of being filed away. A lot of these large companies, when they do internships, they might have like 100 to 1,000 students all do the same project, and they may or may not use any of them. It might just be that they're a tax write-off. So understand like that too if you want to have an impact. I think that the odds of staying on in a startup post internship are much higher too. 1/3 of our interns get offered a position after, and that tends to be the case with startups. Like, a lot of them try people out through internships. But like I said, there's definitely possibilities if you have no experience in an area at all that you can request, hey, I haven't done this, but I want to try this. You have a safe project. And so I have like a list of projects that are like urgent, like can't be screwed up. And then here's some projects that we're going to do at some point. And, so then those are the projects I throw out. Hey, if you want to try something, do this. If it doesn't work out, we'll get to it later. But if it does, hey, we can use that. And then I usually give like gift cards for finishing stuff. If it's like hey, I've never done this before, I just want to try and get my hands wet. Hey, if you finish it, even if we don't use it, I usually throw out, like a gift card that would work out to be like $10 or $15 an hour, because I appreciate the time there, and so I think a lot of startups have like creative ways of doing that. So if you're flexible, then you can get some very interesting experiences out of them.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So a lot of people in the chat are developers. I don't know if all of them, but for sure many of them. So we have a question by Timo. What are the benefits of joining a startup for entry-level developers? I like this question.
Yeah. So I think that machine learning intern in particular, she is a senior now, but she's graduating in December. She has half a year left, but she came on in the summer. So she would be, entry level. So that the idea that I allowed her to try something completely out of her scope before she applied to grad school, so she could confirm that this was what she wanted to do, I think is useful. If you also can usually get better, it depends, but I would say that startups usually pay entry-level people more than a large company, but the more experienced people less. Now, this doesn't mean if you're a senior that you're going to get paid less than an entry-level person, but I can't pay somebody $250,000, $300,000 an hour like Google can, right? So when you get to those senior ones, how startups usually help with that is they give more equity, and people understand that they could end up cashing out more, but this current amount that they're getting paid is less. But I think for the entry-level developers, I've seen that startups tend to be more generous than the larger companies. And this is, of course, a generalization. But you also then can have that equity, which is, if you do get lucky with a good company, then you might have money to build your own company in the future. Again, you can also wear a lot of hats. So if somebody wants to learn something like a new language, I'm like, here, go for it. Like, here's some stuff on it, or go sit in on this meeting. Whereas with larger companies, you usually have to go through HR and, okay, we can't have people crossing into departments and you've got to get approval. And that doesn't happen. There's 21 people on our team, so anybody can go to any meeting.
Nice. Thank you for this insight. And yes, I think that maybe if you join a great company, maybe you are missing maybe how it's structured, because they are too many. They have bigger departments, but you don't have maybe a big picture. Yeah, for example, of this. So yes, thank you. Great answer, Yudai. I want to know what's your definition of MVP, which stands for minimum valuable product, and some tips to know how to apply an MVP. How to start. I think we are almost into the philosophical part, but what's your point of view about this MVP? So the
Yeah.
minimum valuable product.
This is something that you could probably have like 10 hours on, right? Some VC recently
Let's
came
do
out
that.
with
Let's
like,
do it.
yeah,
Let me remove all my video calls. Let's do it.
yeah. So there's one VC came out recently with like, it's not even like the whole product, right? Like it's just a feature or a sub thing, and whittle it down. I mean, it gets kind of into, like you said, like the philosophy of how you approach these. I would say for like alpha testing, it doesn't have to actually even be functional in terms of people being able to onboard themselves, right? Even beta testing, you can have a very circular onboarding system where you have to have like a person help the people get on. That's how ours was. It wasn't until we actually like launched that people can go on board themselves. Now it's very simple and easy to use. But going back to that, getting it into people's hands early is important. So when we were like alpha testing within the company, we also were doing demos with that same platform. So we were letting people see it through the sales calls. And so we are opening it up to like criticism and feedback right away. So I think like the semantics of like, well, what is that is not necessary as long as you can just get people like it can get into any piece of it. Like, so if you can even show a sub part and you even have to only screen share for that, do that. And then again, if it's good enough, then you can build ways for people to get on board it with a human. And then after that, then you build it so it's all self-serving. And so I think, again, the definitions of things are not as critical as just continuing to ramp up. But there's a ton of books on that too, like a ton of business books about like what that's considered. But it's changing now, right? Like now it's like, oh, now we just talk about just get one feature done, and nothing else matters. So that's like a evolving thing, the MVP.
Yeah, from my experience, yeah, of course, this is maybe a statistic of my mind, and maybe I've seen more people waiting too much than people releasing too early. Is this true?
Right.
Because, for example, I tried a
Absolutely.
couple of things, so maybe if you're not sure about what to do, maybe you should release instead of
Yeah.
waiting the other killing feature which will come up in the next couple of weeks, and then months will pass. So maybe I think it's important to get the feedback of the people, because especially for developers, if you start working on something after, I don't know, like 3 or 4 days or a week, you understand everything, you understand where all the buttons are. But maybe when a person who have never seen that, they can also see, I don't know, like I don't know, like those two buttons are just overlapping and you never notice that, something like that. Something in the UI or also in the process, which maybe for you is not more easy to spot because you are too much expert of your own product, right?
Yeah,
Thanks
that's very
for.
true. And also, I think a lot of times people think, oh, it's not good enough to be seen. But if you've ever, I love beta testing other founders' stuff. And I never am like, oh my God, what is this? I'm always like, wow, this is cool. I can't believe they put this out. I'm so glad I get to use this. So if you've ever been on the other side, you're not critical, you're excited. Early adopters are excited and they just want to try new things. So just try to remember, if you haven't been a beta tester, then go offer to do that for somebody, and then you'll realize how it actually feels to be on the feedback side, and then you won't feel as vulnerable when you're putting your stuff out there.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is great. I think when we build our own product, we see everything which is wrong. The wrong alignment, the font, the do different font just a little bit. Other people barely see the page. I don't know, or something like that. So yeah, this is a problem because you know that your product too well. Because on Jennifer, I feel like sitting here all day. Let's do this, Timo. I don't know, Jennifer. If Jennifer, you can do this, we can remove everything, and or maybe maybe a better idea to be to make another episode maybe soon when you have some important stuff and you want to talk about this. You can just send me a DM and we can make a second episode. What do you think? You have
Yeah,
to stay
absolutely.
now 10
I do have a
hours or make another episode.
client coming on at 1, so I'm good till 1. But yeah, I think too, there's obviously always new insights too as I go to different like phases of the company. So there'll always be new things that I can share. And things move fast with startups, so you almost have to like constantly be asking people like, what's going on now, or what's the latest trends now, or what should I be doing, because that's where books are tough. There's some good books that are timeless, but a lot of the stuff becomes out of date really quickly. And that's why I think there's this like new trend where like all books are like no more than 200 pages, because they can't get detailed. Really, like details have to be in blogs nowadays because it's moving so fast.
Absolutely, yeah. Timo, we have another question by Timo. Hey, Moshib on Twitter. Talking about founders, how important is a co-founder and how do you find one? I think that's important, but maybe you should answer.
It's a really tough question. So I went solo, co-founder, solo. So I'm solo now. And I think the benefits of that are I get to move really, really fast because I don't have to check. But if you do that, you have to have a really strong management team. And so when I was forming that, a lot of the people that were on that were just also had other obligations, and so they couldn't put in as much time as I did, and they were comfortable being not like at the founder level, even though they were kind of there from the beginning, so more like advisor roles. So you have to have like a lot of, I think, strong advisors and board members to do solo founding. But if you do co-found, and don't believe me, I tried to get co-founders, and everybody's like, you're too far along. You're the sole inventor of the patent, so you're on both sides. What is there going to be left for me to do? I'm like, okay. But I would go to a lot of founders groups, and a lot of times if you go to like these spaces, and there are paid ones, but I'd start with unpaid ones. There's so many unpaid ones, so don't feel like you have to start paying for this stuff. But if you join some of the unpaid groups, a lot of times at our founders talks, there'll be, anywhere from 50 to 80% of people on the calls are founders, and the other people are people who were founders in the past or are thinking of becoming founders. And so that's one way to find people. And then if you even just put it out on social media, you'll start to realize there's a lot of other people who are looking for one side or the other. So you have to decide, like, are you more on the tech side or on the business side? Because usually in the beginning, people are one or the other, and that's what they're looking for. So you want to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and then find people to fill in those weaknesses. But I would definitely start by going on, Slack channels, Twitter Spaces, Discords, and connecting to people that way.
Yeah, Jennifer, I have the famous billionaire idea. What about a product to find co-founders in a
So there's tons of, there actually are a lot of those. And they cost a lot of money. And I think it's like hard for bootstrappers. Like, we were bootstrapping for a long time. I had 2 small checks from my family before raising this crowdfunding, because the closest living relatives I have are my 2 aunts and my first cousin. So, that like traditional family and friend round was not really an option for me. And so there's a lot of people in that situation where they can't be spending $500 for a month or sometimes it's more to get into these programs, but they do exist. Sometimes they look like they're free, but then you can't connect to anybody until you start to pay. So again, I would go to the free communities first, if possible. Give yourself a month, because a lot of those people are all about the give back and give first mentality, and want to help share ideas with each other. And you also have to consider that if people are on those other platforms, they've probably also already tried finding people organically. And so there might be reasons that they may have. It might either be because they have tons of money and they don't care, it's easy for them to spend it, or they might just have a hard time finding a good fit. And so that's concerning to me too, because then you might be having an uphill battle with that. Like, I found a lot of people who say they want a co-founder, on the, like, for technical co-founders who want to find a founder, but a lot of them actually have their own business idea, and they want that to be the one that comes to life. And so they might be trying to build a business with a business co-founder, but in their mind, they're kind of caught on their idea too. And so you can feel this like lack of focus. And that happens a lot. because a lot of times people haven't let go of some of their old companies. And so those people end up on these platforms a lot because it's almost like they feel like they are doing something by going on there. But again, if you interview them and talk to them, you'll find out that they're actually not ready to let go of some of their old ideas or their old company. I don't know if it's like a spouse or somebody who's like, go find a new one, but it doesn't feel like they're really wanting to be there of their own accord usually. Again, I'm making a lot of generalizations. So for everybody, you've got to find out what works for you.
Yeah, perfect. So I think this will be the last question because we are close to 1 hour. It literally flies this hour, but okay, yeah, I have the timer. So maybe last question. But Code with Ali, we have not. You said just hi, just to Jennifer, not to me. Okay. Are you recommending to buy a startup or create one?
So it depends. If you have an idea, you should be, trying to see if it's viable or not. If you're a technical person, there's plenty of people with viable ideas. Buying one is tough because usually startups haven't quite proven something out yet. So you might not have enough data to show if it's going to continue to be profitable or not. So that could also have to do with how we're defining startup. I think MicroAcquire is a great company to buy like small micro SaaS, but you'd have to have a way to sell that and continue to grow it. So it's usually small companies. I think somebody else quickly asked too, like, should you be friends? Should you have a co-founder that's a friend? Think about what the repercussions are going to be if that person doesn't do their part, and if you sever that friendship forever. Which you have to be, if you have a C Corp, you have to always act in the best interest of the company, not of your personal goals. And so that can be really tough. So that person that I had to let go in the beginning, he was a former client of mine, but I still felt like I let the relationship go on too long. Whereas if we had no connection, I would have let him go much sooner. And he wasn't even like somebody who was like, a friend outside of that business relationship, but that also makes it harder. So you have to realize that you might subconsciously, give that person more leeway that might actually be poor for the business. So I would probably advise against it. It's easy to find those people, but I'd say don't go closer than an acquaintance.
For example, this is exactly what happened to me. I tried to start something with some of my friends and relatives, but I didn't even start. So maybe I'll suggest, I don't know, of course we have had our personal experience. Maybe you have done a startup with your friend, you are a millionaire now, so you have a different perception of me and you, of course, in our case, but maybe what we can say is that maybe the first one is better to don't do that with a friend already, because we do a lot of mistakes the first one. So maybe once you already know how things work, you can even do this with some of your friend, or maybe but maybe the very first one you will make a lot of mistakes. It can fail. I don't want to say 100%, but let's say close to that. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, and also to Francesco. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Jennifer, we are close to 1 hour, so we will make a second episode soon. Would you like to give a final message to the people that are still watching? Thank you so much for coming here. It's a bit different than just doing a Twitter space. I hope to see you soon. If you want to build some Twitter space, of course, feel free to hit me up. And yes, thank you so much. Please, a final message to the people that are still watching.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, would you like to say something to?
Oh yeah, of course.
Just 2
I didn't
minutes.
want to steal your thunder, but yeah, I'm happy to connect on Twitter. That's where I check my DMs the most. So if anybody has any specific questions, but I definitely recommend ask handfuls of founders because you'll get different views, and it depends on where you're starting and what your goal is and what advice to listen to the most. But yeah, definitely, I think it'd be great to do a follow-up, and spaces are also a fantastic way, I think, to grab up a lot of people quickly. So we can definitely plan one of those as well.
Yeah, I usually say that I'm not Twitter space addicted and I can stop whenever I want.
I don't know. I might be addicted to that.
Yes, thank you, Graham. Thank you for you. I think we got a lot of great questions. Yes, thank you. Francesco and Jennifer. Thanks to Francesco, and goodbye. Perfect, Jennifer. So please remember to check the description, because we put some links both for Jennifer and also her new startup. I really wish you best luck. I think that we need to keep in touch maybe for the further steps, because I'm really interested and would like also to share this, even if I may be one of the smallest investors, but still maybe I can support you in some ways. So feel free to hit me up. Okay.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Thank
We
you
are
so
done.
much. Have a great day.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye bye.